I didn't think I'd actually come. When Emma first sent the group text 3 weeks ago, New Year's Eve, our city, let's do the garden thing one more time, I stared at my phone for a long time before responding. It had been so many years. We'd all moved on, built different lives in different places. Claire was in Seattle now, working for some tech startup. Sophie had been teaching abroad in Spain. Emma stayed closest, only 2 states over, but even she rarely came back to visit. And me? I'd been drifting, really. A string of jobs that paid the bills but never quite felt right. A few relationships that fizzled out before they ever really began. I told myself I was figuring things out, that I was still young, that there was time. But lately, I'd been feeling unmoored, like I'd lost the thread of something important and couldn't quite remember what it was. So when Emma suggested we meet up, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say I was too busy, that I couldn't get the time off work, but the truth was I had nowhere else to be. And something about her message, the simplicity of it, the way she didn't oversell or over-explain, made me feel like maybe this was exactly what I needed. I texted back a simple, "I'm in." Claire replied immediately with 3 exclamation points. Sophie sent a string of heart emojis, and just like that, it was decided. Now, standing outside the coffee shop where we'd agreed to meet, I felt a flutter of nervousness in my chest. It wasn't anxiety exactly, more like anticipation mixed with the faint ache of nostalgia. I could see them through the window, Emma's blonde hair pulled back in a loose bun, Claire gesturing animately with her hands, Sophie laughing at something, her head thrown back. They looked older, of course, we all did, but they also looked exactly the same. I pushed open the door, and the warm air inside wrapped around me like a hug. The smell of coffee and cinnamon filled the space, and for a moment I just stood there, taking it in. Then Emma looked up and saw me. "There she is," she said, her face breaking into a wide smile. They all turned, and suddenly I was surrounded. Hugs that lasted longer than usual, voices overlapping with, "Oh my God, you look amazing," and "I can't believe we're actually doing this." I felt something loosen in my chest, something I hadn't realized I'd been holding on to. We settled into a corner booth, the kind with cracked vinyl seats and a table that wobbled slightly. Someone ordered a pot of tea to share. Claire pulled out her phone to show us photos of her apartment in Seattle, small but cozy with a view of the water. Sophie talked about her students in Madrid, how they'd thrown her a surprise goodbye party before she left. Emma told us about her new dog, a golden retriever named Biscuit, who apparently had no sense of personal space. And me? I didn't have much to share, but nobody pressed. They just listened, nodding, smiling, making space for me in the conversation without demanding I fill it. It felt easy, comfortable, like slipping into an old sweater that still fit perfectly. After a while, Emma leaned back and looked at each of us in turn. "So," she said softly, "are we really doing this? The garden?" Sophie grinned. "I brought seeds." Claire laughed. "Of course you did." "I wasn't sure if Mrs. Hartley's place would still be there," I admitted. "It's been so long." Emma nodded. "I drove by last week just to check. The house was gone. They tore it down a few years ago, I think. But the garden, it's still there. Overgrown, wild, but it's there." Something warm spread through my chest. I hadn't realized how much I'd wanted that to be true until she said it. "Then let's go," Claire said, her eyes bright. "Let's go see it." We finished our tea, paid the bill, and stepped back out into the December evening. The air was cold and crisp, the kind that made your breath visible and your cheeks flush pink. The streetlights were just beginning to flicker on, casting long shadows across the pavement. As we started walking, side by side down the familiar streets of our childhood, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't dramatic or sudden, just a quiet sense of rightness, like I'd been walking in circles for years, and now, finally, I was heading in the right direction. The walk to the old neighborhood felt longer than I remembered, but maybe that was because we kept stopping. Claire paused in front of the corner store where we used to buy candy with our allowance money. "Is that still Mr. Patterson's place?" she asked, squinting at the faded sign above the door. Emma shook her head. "It changed hands years ago, but they still sell those sour gummy worms you used to love." Claire laughed. "God, I lived on those things in 8th grade." We kept walking, our footsteps falling into an easy rhythm. Sophie had her hands tucked deep into her coat pockets, her scarf wrapped twice around her neck. She'd always been the cold one, even back when we were kids. "I forgot how quiet it gets here at night," she said softly. "In Madrid, there's always noise, music, people, traffic, but here it's so still." She was right. The streets were nearly empty, just a few cars passing by with their headlights cutting through the dusk. Most of the houses had their curtains drawn, warm light glowing from behind them. I could hear the distant sound of someone's television, the faint bark of a dog, the rustle of wind through bare tree branches. It felt peaceful, safe, like the neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting for something. We turned onto Maple Street, and suddenly everything looked smaller than I remembered. The houses that had seemed enormous when we were children now looked modest, even cramped. The trees we used to climb were taller, their branches reaching across the street to form a canopy overhead. "There," Emma said, pointing ahead, "that's where the Hartley house used to be." I could see it now, or rather, I could see where it used to be. The lot was empty except for overgrown grass and a chain-link fence that sagged in places. Beyond the fence, I could just make out the outline of the garden, wild and tangled, like something from a fairy tale. We stopped at the edge of the property, and for a moment, none of us spoke. I remembered Mrs. Hartley. She'd been ancient even when we were kids, though looking back now, she probably wasn't much older than 70. She had silver hair that she wore in a long braid down her back, and she always smelled like lavender and soil. She used to sit on her porch in the evenings, watching the neighborhood with sharp, knowing eyes. We'd been terrified of her at first, but one day, when I was maybe 9 or 10, I'd kicked my ball into her yard by accident. I'd stood at the fence, frozen, debating whether to just leave it there. But then she'd appeared, holding the ball, and instead of yelling at me, she'd smiled. "You and your friends," she'd said, "you're always running around together, like a little flock of birds." I'd nodded, unsure what to say. "That's good," she'd continued. "Friends like that are rare. You hold on to them." After that, we weren't scared of her anymore, and when Emma had suggested we start our New Year's tradition in her garden, it had felt right, like she'd given us permission without ever saying the words. "Do you think she'd mind us coming back like this?" Sophie asked quietly, as if reading my thoughts. Emma smiled. "I think she'd love it." Claire was already testing the fence, finding a spot where the chain link had come loose from its post. "Come on," she said, pulling it aside. "Same way we used to sneak in." One by one, we slipped through the gap in the fence, our coats catching slightly on the metal. The grass was tall and damp, brushing against our jeans as we made our way toward the center of the garden. It was more overgrown than I expected. Wild roses had taken over one corner, their thorny branches sprawling in every direction. Ivy climbed what remained of an old wooden trellis, but beneath all the wildness, I could still see the bones of what it used to be, the stone path we used to follow, the circle of flat rocks where we used to sit, and the old oak tree at the back that always felt like the heart of the place. "It's still here," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Sophie reached out and touched one of the rose branches gently, carefully avoiding the thorns. "It's beautiful," she said, "like it's been waiting for us." We made our way to the circle of stones, brushing away leaves and debris until we could see them clearly. They were exactly as I remembered, smooth and gray, arranged in a perfect ring. We used to sit here for hours, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for futures that seemed impossibly far away. Now those futures had arrived, and we were back. Emma set down her bag and pulled out 4 small terracotta pots, the kind you could buy at any garden store. They were simple, unglazed, the color of dried clay. She handed one to each of us. "I wasn't sure what kind of seeds to bring," Sophie said, reaching into her pocket, "so I brought wildflower mix. I thought it seemed right, something that could grow anywhere." "Perfect," Claire said softly. We settled onto the stones, the cold seeping through our jeans, but none of us minding. The sky above us was deepening from blue to purple, the first stars just beginning to appear. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of fireworks, someone starting their celebration early. Emma pulled out a small bag of potting soil and started filling her pot. "Do you remember what you wished for back then?" I thought about it. Not all of them, but I remember the last one, the year we turned 18. "What was it?" Sophie asked. I hesitated, then smiled. I wished that no matter where we went or what we did, we'd always find our way back to each other. Claire's eyes softened. "Well," she said quietly, "I guess it came true." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, each of us filling our pots with soil. The earth was cool and slightly damp, and there was something grounding about the feel of it between my fingers. It reminded me of being young, of summer days spent digging in the dirt, of simpler times when the biggest decision we had to make was which game to play next. Sophie was the first to finish preparing her pot. She opened the packet of wildflower seeds carefully, cupping a small handful in her palm. Even in the fading light, I could see them, tiny, varied, some dark and some pale, full of possibility. "I used to think about this," she said quietly, not looking up. "When I was in Spain, especially on New Year's Eve, I'd be at some party or dinner, surrounded by people, and I'd suddenly remember this, the 4 of us, sitting in this garden. I'd wonder if you all remembered too." "I did," Emma said immediately. "Every year, even when I'd tried not to." Claire nodded. "Same. I'd be watching the ball drop in Times Square or whatever, and I'd think about how we used to count down right here, whispering so we wouldn't get caught. It felt more real than any of the big celebrations I went to after." I understood what she meant. There was something about this place, this ritual that had marked us. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was deeper than that. It was the feeling of being truly seen, truly known, by people who understood you before you even understood yourself. "What made you text us, Emma? After all this time, what made you decide this was the year?" Emma was quiet for a moment, pressing soil down gently in her pot. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I turned 28 last month, and I was sitting alone in my apartment eating takeout, and I felt so lonely. Not because I was alone. I'm alone a lot, and that's usually fine. But I felt lonely for this. For people who knew me before I became whoever I'm supposed to be now. People who remember when I wanted to be a veterinarian, and when I cried over that boy in 10th grade, and when I believed anything was possible." She looked up at us then, and I could see the vulnerability in her eyes. I guess I just wanted to remember who I used to be, and I thought maybe coming back here, doing this again, might help me figure out who I'm supposed to be next. Sophie reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "I'm glad you texted," she said simply. "Me too," Claire added. "I didn't realize how much I needed this until I was on the plane coming here. I kept thinking about work, about all the emails I wasn't answering, all the meetings I was missing. But the closer I got, the more I realized none of that matters as much as I think it does. This matters. You all matter." I felt a tightness in my throat. It was strange how easy it was to forget that, to get so caught up in the daily grind, in trying to be successful or impressive, or whatever we thought we were supposed to be, that we forgot about the people who actually mattered, the ones who loved us, not for what we accomplished, but simply for who we were. "I've been feeling lost," I admitted, the words coming out before I could stop them. "For a while now, like I'm waiting for my life to start, but I keep missing the moment when it's supposed to begin. Everyone else seems to have it figured out, and I'm just here, still trying to figure out what I want." Emma looked at me with understanding. "Maybe that's okay. Maybe we're all still figuring it out. Maybe we'll always be figuring it out." "That's terrifying," I said, but I was smiling. "Or freeing," Sophie suggested, depending on how you look at it. Claire started pressing seeds into her soil one by one, her movements careful and deliberate. "You know what I realized? All those wishes we made when we were kids, they were always about the future, about what we wanted to become or achieve or find. But maybe this year I want to wish for something different." "Like what?" I asked. She got about it. "Maybe just peace or presence, the ability to be where I am, instead of always looking ahead to the next thing." "That's a good wish," Emma said softly. I watched as they each began planting their seeds, tucking them into the dark soil with gentle fingers. The ritual felt both familiar and new, the same actions we'd performed dozens of times before, but weighted now with different meanings, different hopes. I picked up my own packet of seeds and tore it open carefully. As I held them in my hand, I thought about what I wanted to wish for. In the past, my wishes had been specific: good grades, a particular college, a job I'd end up hating within 6 months. But Claire was right. Maybe it was time for a different kind of wish. "Do you remember Mrs. Hartley's garden in spring, when everything would bloom at once? It was like an explosion of color. She used to let us pick flowers," she'd say. "Just a few," she'd say, "enough for a small bouquet." "I wonder if she knew," Claire said, "about our tradition, about what we were doing here every New Year's." "I think she knew," I said. "She always knew more than she let on." The sky was darker now, deep indigo with stars scattered across it like seeds of light. The air had grown colder, and I could see our breath forming small clouds when we spoke. But I didn't feel cold. Sitting here, surrounded by my oldest friends, I felt warm from the inside out. "Should we write our wishes?" Emma asked, pulling out a small notebook and tearing out 4 pages. She handed them around, along with a pen. I took the paper, feeling its smoothness between my fingers. It was such a simple thing, a piece of paper, a wish, a seed, but it had always felt like magic. I stared at the blank piece of paper in my hand, the pen poised above it, the cursor of possibility, waiting. Around me, the others had already started writing. I could hear the soft scratch of pen on paper, see the concentration on their faces in the dim light. Sophie was biting her lower lip the way she always did when she was thinking hard. Claire had already folded her paper once, then unfolded it to add something more. Emma wrote quickly, decisively, as if she'd known exactly what she wanted to say all along. I took a breath and let it out slowly, watching it form a small cloud in the cold air. What did I want? When we were younger, the answers had come so easily. I want to pass my math test. I want Jake to notice me. I want to get into a good college. I want to travel. I want to be happy. The wishes had been like stepping stones, each one leading to the next, creating a path forward that seemed clear and straight. But somewhere along the way, the path had become muddied. The stepping stones had spread farther apart, or maybe I'd just stopped being able to see them as clearly. I thought about the past year, the job that paid the bills but left me feeling empty, the apartment I'd moved into that still didn't quite feel like home, the relationships that had fizzled before they could become something real. I thought about the mornings I'd woken up feeling like I was supposed to be somewhere else, doing something else, being someone else. But who? I looked around at my friends, at their faces soft in the starlight. Emma, who'd always been the brave one, the one who spoke up when something wasn't right. Claire, who could make anyone laugh even when they didn't want to. Sophie, who noticed things, the small details that everyone else missed, the feelings beneath the words. And me, who was I? I used to know, or at least I used to think I knew. I was the quiet one, the listener, the one who held space for everyone else's stories. But lately, I'd started to wonder if I'd spent so much time listening that I'd forgotten to write my own story. Or maybe I was just too afraid to start. The pen touched the paper, and I began to write. I wish for the courage to become whoever I'm meant to be, even if I don't know who that is yet. I read it over once, then folded the paper carefully, creasing the edges the way we used to, in half, then in half again, making it small enough to tuck beneath a seed. Done? Emma asked, looking up. I nodded. Done. Should we read them out loud or keep them secret like we used to? We'd debated this every year when we were younger. Some years we'd shared, reading our wishes in hushed, giggling voices. Other years we'd kept them private, sacred, whispered only to the earth and the seeds. Secret, Sophie said softly. I think they should be secret. We all agreed without discussion. Some things were meant to be held close. One by one, we made small wells in the soil of our pots with our fingers, placed our folded wishes inside, and covered them over. Then we pressed the seeds on top, adding another thin layer of soil to protect them. It was such a simple act, but it felt ceremonial, important. Now we just need water, Emma said, looking around. I'd forgotten about that part. When we were kids, we'd brought water bottles or borrowed from Mrs. Hartley's garden hose. But now, in the abandoned garden with no house and no hose, we hadn't thought to bring any. There's a gas station a few blocks away, Claire suggested. We could go buy some bottled water. But Sophie was looking up at the sky, at the heavy clouds that had been gathering while we worked. I think nature might take care of it for us. As if on cue, I felt the first drop hit my cheek. Cold, clean, perfect. Then another, and another. Within moments, it was raining, not a downpour, but a gentle, steady rain that pattered softly on the leaves around us and darkened the soil in our pots. We looked at each other and started laughing, the kind of surprised, delighted laughter that bubbles up when something feels like fate or magic or both. Of course, Emma said, tilting her face up to the sky. Of course it would rain right now. We stayed there, sitting on our circle of stones, holding our pots and letting the rain water our seeds and our wishes. The cold droplets ran down our faces and soaked into our hair and clothes, but none of us moved to leave. We just sat there, together, letting ourselves be part of the moment. I closed my eyes and felt the rain on my eyelids, on my lips. I felt the weight of the pot in my hands and the solid stone beneath me. I felt the presence of my friends around me, their quiet breathing, their stillness. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely present, not worried about tomorrow or regretful about yesterday, just here, just now. "Thank you," I said quietly, opening my eyes, "for suggesting this, Emma, for coming, all of you. I didn't know how much I needed it until right now." "Me neither," Claire admitted, water dripping from her nose, "but I'm glad we're here." Sophie smiled, her dark hair plastered to her forehead. "We should make a pact," she said, "to do this again, maybe not every year, but when we need it, when we need each other." "Deal," Emma said immediately. "Deal," Claire and I echoed. The rain began to ease, softening to a drizzle, then to occasional drops. The clouds started to break apart, revealing patches of clear sky and more stars than before. Everything smelled fresh and clean, like the earth had been washed new. We stood up slowly, carefully, holding our pots like precious cargo. My jeans were soaked through and I could feel the cold now, but it didn't matter. Nothing could diminish what I was feeling, this sense of connection, of rightness, of being exactly where I was supposed to be. "What time is it?" Sophie asked. Claire checked her phone. "Almost 10. We have 2 hours until midnight. Should we find somewhere warm? Get some coffee or something?" But I shook my head. "Not yet," I said. "Can we just walk for a bit, through the old neighborhood?" They all nodded, understanding without needing explanation. We made our way back through the gap in the fence, our pots cradled carefully in our arms. The rain had left everything glistening, the sidewalks, the parked cars, the bare branches of the trees. The streetlights reflected in the puddles, creating small pools of golden light that we stepped around as we walked. Nobody spoke for a while. We just moved together through the quiet streets, our footsteps the only sound besides the occasional drip of water from the rooftops. It felt right, this silence, comfortable, like we were each lost in our own thoughts, but still connected by invisible threads. I thought about all the times we'd walked these streets as kids, racing each other to the corner, riding bikes with playing cards clipped to the spokes, walking home from school with backpacks weighing us down, complaining about homework we'd inevitably do together at someone's kitchen table. We turned onto Birch Street, and I recognized the park where we used to play. It looked smaller now, the playground equipment more worn than I remembered. The swings hung motionless, their chains dark with rain. "Should we?" Claire asked, nodding toward them. Without answering, we headed across the wet grass. Sophie set her pot down carefully near the swing set, and we all did the same, creating a small circle of terracotta sentinels to watch over us. I sat down on one of the swings, the cold metal chain biting through my damp jacket. Emma took the one next to me, then Claire, then Sophie. For a moment, we just sat there, our feet on the ground, not swinging yet. "Remember when we used to have contests to see who could swing the highest?" Sophie said. "You always won. You were fearless." Sophie laughed softly. "I wasn't fearless. I was just good at pretending to be." "Aren't we all?" Emma murmured. I pushed off gently, letting the swing carry me back and forth in small arcs. The motion was soothing, rhythmic, forward and back, like breathing. "Can I tell you something?" Claire said, her voice tentative. "Something I haven't told anyone?" "Of course," Emma said immediately. Claire was quiet for a moment, building up to it. She finally said, "I hate my job. I know I talk about it like it's this great opportunity, this amazing career move, but I hate it. I'm miserable every single day." The confession hung in the air between us. None of us rushed to fill the silence with reassurances or advice. We just listened, the way we'd always listened to each other. "Everyone thinks I have it all together," Claire continued, her voice thick. "My parents are so proud. My friends from college are jealous. Even I thought it was what I wanted. But I wake up every morning with this feeling of dread, and I just keep going because I don't know what else to do, because I'm afraid if I quit, I'll be admitting that I made a mistake, that I wasted all this time." "It's not wasted," Sophie said gently. "Even if it's not right, it's not wasted. You learned what you don't want. That's valuable." "Is it?" Claire asked, and I could hear the pain in her voice. "Because right now it just feels like I'm stuck, like I painted myself into a corner and now I can't get out without ruining everything." I understood that feeling, the fear of change, even when staying the same was slowly suffocating you, the worry about what other people would think, the question of whether you had the courage to start over. "What would you do," Emma asked, "if you could do anything?" Claire started swinging a little, her feet leaving the ground. "I don't know," she said. "That's the scary part. I don't know what I want instead. I just know it's not this." "Maybe that's enough," I said quietly. "Maybe knowing what you don't want is the first step." "When did you become wise?" Claire asked, but she was smiling a little. "I'm not wise, I'm just as lost as you are. But maybe we're supposed to be lost sometimes. Maybe that's when we find the things we weren't looking for." Emma had started swinging too, higher now, her hair flying back with each arc. She said, "I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to have everything figured out, like there's some timeline we're supposed to follow, some checklist we're supposed to complete. But life doesn't work like that. It's messy and confusing, and most of the time we're just making our best guess." "That's not very comforting," Claire said, but she was laughing now. "No," Emma agreed, "but it's true, and maybe there's some comfort in knowing we're all just guessing together." Sophie had started swinging too, pumping her legs the way we used to, going higher and higher. She said, "I broke up with someone before I left Spain, someone I thought I might marry, and everyone kept asking if I was okay, if I needed to talk about it. But the truth is, I felt relieved. We were comfortable together, but it wasn't right, and I kept waiting for it to feel right, kept thinking maybe I just needed to try harder or wait longer. But when I ended it, it was like I could finally breathe again." "Do you regret it?" I asked. "No," Sophie said firmly. "I regret staying as long as I did. I regret trying to force something that was never going to fit." I thought about my own life, my own choices, all the times I'd stayed in situations that didn't fit because I was afraid of the alternative, afraid of being alone, of starting over, of making the wrong choice. But maybe the wrong choice was staying still, staying safe, staying in places that made me smaller than I was meant to be. We swang in silence for a while, each of us lost in our own thoughts. The night air was cold on my face, but the motion kept me warm. I closed my eyes and let myself feel it, the rush of air, the weightless moment at the top of each arc, and the gentle pull of gravity bringing me back down. Eventually, we slowed down, dragging our feet against the wood chips until we came to a stop. My legs felt pleasantly tired, and there was a lightness in my chest that hadn't been there before, like something had shifted, even though nothing had really changed. We collected our pots and continued walking, letting our feet guide us through the neighborhood without any particular destination. We passed the library where we'd spent countless afternoons, the coffee shop that used to be a video rental store, the intersection where we'd waited for the school bus every morning. "Do you ever think about who we thought we'd be?" I asked. "When we were kids, planning out our whole lives?" Emma smiled. "All the time. I was going to be a veterinarian with a farm full of rescue animals. I was going to be a fashion designer in Paris, living in some tiny apartment with a view of the Eiffel Tower." Claire laughed. "I wanted to be an astronaut. I had this whole plan mapped out: study physics, join NASA, be the first person to set foot on Mars." They all looked at me expectantly. "I wanted to be a writer," I said quietly. It was something I hadn't admitted out loud in years. "I was going to write novels, important ones, the kind that changed people's lives." "Why didn't you?" Sophie asked, not accusingly, just curious. I thought about it. I don't know exactly. Life got in the way, I guess. I had to pay rent, had to be practical. And then the longer I waited, the scarier it became. What if I tried and I wasn't any good? What if I spent years working on something and it didn't matter to anyone? "What if you were good?" Emma countered. "What if it did matter?" I didn't have an answer for that. We turned onto a street I didn't immediately recognize, but then I saw it, the small brick building on the corner with the faded awning. "Is that—" "The ice cream shop!" Claire exclaimed. "Oh my God, it's still here!" We hurried toward it, and sure enough, there was a light on inside. Through the window I could see the same checkered floor, the same glass display case, though the flavors inside had probably changed a dozen times over. "Are they open?" Sophie asked, peering at the door. Emma tried the handle, and it swung open easily. A small bell chimed above us, and the warmth inside wrapped around us like a blanket. The smell hit me immediately, sugar and vanilla and waffle cones, and suddenly I was 12 years old again, counting out quarters to buy a single scoop of mint chip. An older man looked up from behind the counter, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "Well, well," he said, "look what the rain brought in. You four look like you've been on an adventure." We must have been a sight, damp and disheveled, clutching terracotta pots, our cheeks flushed from the cold. "We're revisiting old haunts," Emma said, smiling. "Do you remember us? We used to come here all the time when we were kids." He studied us for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I remember a lot of kids, but yeah, I think I remember you four. Always together, always laughing about something, the inseparables, I used to call you in my head." Something about that made my throat tight. The inseparables. That's exactly what we'd been. "What can I get you?" he asked. We ordered without hesitation, the same flavors we'd always gotten. Mint chip for me, Rocky Road for Emma, strawberry for Claire, and cookies and cream for Sophie. He scooped them into waffle cones, his movements practiced and efficient, and handed them over one by one. "On the house," he said when Emma reached for her wallet. "Call it a New Year's gift. It's nice to see people come back. Most don't." "Thank you," we said in unison, and he waved us off with a smile. We found a small table near the window and sat down, setting our pots carefully on the empty fourth chair. The ice cream was cold and sweet and perfect, and for a few minutes we just ate in comfortable silence, watching the occasional car pass by outside. "This is exactly what I needed," Claire said, her voice soft. I didn't know it, but this is exactly it." "What do you mean?" Sophie asked. Claire gestured around with her cone. "This, all of it. Being here with you, doing something silly like eating ice cream at 10:30 on New Year's Eve. No pressure, no expectations, no trying to be impressive or successful or whatever. Just being." "I know what you mean," I said. "It's like we can just be ourselves here. Our real selves, not the versions we show the rest of the world." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "That's what I miss most about being young. Not the lack of responsibility or the free time, but the feeling that you didn't have to perform. You could just exist." "Maybe we still can," Sophie suggested. "Maybe we just forgot how." We finished our ice cream slowly, savoring every bite. Through the window, I watched the street glisten in the lamplight, watched the occasional person hurry past bundled against the cold. Somewhere out there, people were at parties, counting down the hours until midnight with champagne and confetti and noise. But here in this quiet ice cream shop with my oldest friends felt like exactly where I was supposed to be. The man behind the counter had turned on a small radio, and soft music filled the space, something jazzy and mellow. Emma started humming along, and then Sophie joined in, and before I knew it, we were all humming together, creating a harmony that was imperfect but beautiful. When we finished, the man behind the counter was smiling at us from behind the counter. "You girls have a good new year," he said, "and don't wait another 10 years to come back, you hear?" "We won't," we promised, though we all knew how easy it was to lose track of time, to let years slip by without meaning to. Outside, the air felt even colder after the warmth of the shop. We pulled our coats tighter and picked up our pots again, cradling them against our chests. "What now?" Claire asked, checking her phone. "It's almost 11. "Should we head toward downtown?" Sophie suggested. "Find somewhere to watch the fireworks?" But Emma was looking down the street, toward the far end of the neighborhood. "There's one more place I want to go," she said quietly, "if that's okay with everyone." We followed her gaze and couldn't see what she was looking at from here. "Where?" I asked. Emma turned to look at us, and there was something vulnerable in her expression. "The treehouse," she said quietly. "I want to see if it's still there." The treehouse. I hadn't thought about it in years, but as soon as Emma said it, the memories came flooding back. The old oak tree at the edge of Henderson Park, the one with branches thick enough to hold a small platform we'd built one summer with stolen planks and borrowed nails. It had been our secret place, our sanctuary, the spot where we'd shared our deepest fears and wildest dreams. "Do you think it's still standing?" Claire asked doubtfully. "That was, 15 years ago?" "Only one way to find out," Sophie said. We started walking toward the park, our pace a little quicker now, energized by curiosity and something else, hope maybe, or nostalgia, or the desire to find that one more piece of our childhood still intact. Henderson Park was bigger than the playground we'd stopped at earlier, with walking trails and picnic areas and a small pond that froze over in winter. We'd spent countless hours here, playing tag, having birthday parties, learning to ride bikes without training wheels. As we walked through the entrance, following the path we'd walked 1,000 times before, I felt my heart beating faster. What if the tree was gone? What if they'd cut it down to make room for something new, something more modern and practical? "There," Emma said, pointing ahead, and there it was, the oak tree, massive and ancient, its bare branches reaching up into the night sky like dark fingers. And nestled in those branches, somehow still there after all these years, was the treehouse. It looked smaller than I remembered, and worse for wear. The wood was weathered and gray, some of the planks were missing, and the rope ladder we'd used to climb up was long gone. But it was there. It had survived. "I can't believe it," Claire breathed. "I really can't believe it's still here." We approached slowly, reverently, as if the treehouse might disappear if we moved too quickly. When we reached the base of the tree, we stood looking up at it, our necks craned back. "Think it's safe to climb?" asked Sophie. "Absolutely not," Emma said, but she was already studying the tree, looking for footholds in the bark. "We're really going to do this, aren't we?" I said, though I was already setting my pot down carefully at the base of the tree. "We're really going to do this," Claire confirmed. Emma went first, finding handholds and footholds that she must have remembered from muscle memory alone. She climbed carefully, testing each branch before putting her full weight on it. When she reached the platform, she leaned over the edge and called down, "It's actually not too bad up here. The boards are solid." Then Sophie went, more cautiously but with the same determination, then Claire, and finally me. My hands were cold as I gripped the rough bark, and my muscles protested. I'd spent too many years sitting at desks and not enough climbing trees. But slowly, carefully, I made my way up, branch by branch, until Emma's hand reached down to help pull me onto the platform. The four of us sat squeezed together on the small wooden platform, our backs against the trunk of the tree. It was cramped and uncomfortable and absolutely perfect. Through the gaps in the branches, I could see the lights of the neighborhood spread out below us, twinkling like earthbound stars. "We used to fit better," Claire said, laughing, as she tried to find a comfortable position. "We were smaller," Sophie pointed out, "and less concerned about splinters," I added, already feeling the rough wood through my jeans. But despite the discomfort, nobody suggested climbing back down. We just sat there, pressed together for warmth, looking out at the world from our old perch. "Can I tell you something?" I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "I've been thinking about it all night, and I think I know what I need to do." They turned to look at me, waiting. "I need to quit my job, and I need to try writing again. Really try, not just dabble or make excuses, or tell myself I'll do it someday. I need to actually do it." Saying it out loud made it real, made it terrifying, but also made it possible. "You should," Emma said immediately. "You were always meant to write. Even back then, I knew it." "But what if I fail?" I asked, voicing the fear that had kept me paralyzed for so long. "Then you fail," Sophie said simply, "and then you try again, or you try something else. But at least you'll know, at least you won't spend the rest of your life wondering what if." "When did you get so wise?" I asked, echoing Claire's earlier words to me. Sophie smiled. "I've been spending some time with my past self tonight. She was braver than I remembered." "We all were," Claire said quietly. "We used to believe we could do anything, be anything. When did we stop believing that?" "When the world told us to be realistic, when we started listening to people who were more afraid than we were. So let's stop listening," I said. "Let's make a pact, right here, right now. Let's promise to be brave, to try the scary things, to not let fear make our decisions for us." "I'm in," Claire said without hesitation. "I'm going to quit my job too. I don't know what I'll do next, but I can't keep pretending to be happy when I'm not. I'm going to stop settling, in relationships, in work, in everything. I'm going to hold out for things that feel right, even if it takes longer. And I'm going to stop being so afraid of being alone. I'm going to learn to be happy with just myself before I try to be happy with someone else. We clasped hands in the center of our small circle, the way we used to when we made promises as kids. "To being brave," I said. "To being brave," they echoed. We sat in the treehouse a while longer, reluctant to leave this moment behind. The cold was seeping through our clothes now, making us shiver, but still we stayed. There was something sacred about this space, about being suspended between earth and sky, between who we'd been and who we were becoming. "What time is it?" Emma finally asked. Claire checked her phone, the screen glowing bright in the darkness. 11:45, 15 minutes until midnight. "We should get our pots," Sophie said. "We left them at the bottom." Reluctantly, we began the climb down. It was harder going down than up, scarier somehow when you couldn't see where your feet were going. But we made it, one by one, dropping the last few feet to the soft ground below. Our pots were exactly where we'd left them, lined up like little sentinels. We picked them up carefully, and I was relieved to see that the soil was still damp, the seeds safe beneath their blanket of earth. "Where should we be at midnight?" Claire asked. "Here or back at the garden?" "The garden. That's where we planted our wishes. That's where we should be when the new year begins." We started walking back, our pace faster now, aware of the time ticking away. The streets were busier than before, people heading to parties or bars, groups of friends laughing and calling to each other, the energy of the approaching midnight building in the air around us. But we moved through it all in our own bubble, the four of us and our pots and our shared history. I thought about how different this New Year's Eve was from the ones I'd spent recently, crowded parties where I didn't know half the people, watching countdown shows on TV while scrolling through my phone, falling asleep before midnight because I couldn't find a reason to stay awake. This felt real. This felt like it mattered. We reached Mrs. Hartley's old lot again and slipped through the fence. The garden was darker now, the clouds having drifted back to cover some of the stars, but there was enough light from the street lamps to see by, enough to find our way back to the circle of stones. We sat down in our old spots, holding our pots in our laps. My fingers were numb from the cold, but I could still feel the rough texture of the terracotta, the slight weight of the earth and seed inside. "Should we say something, or just wait?" Sophie asked. "Let's just be here, together, that's enough." We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the city around us. Distant music, car horns, laughter, the bang and crackle of early fireworks. I closed my eyes and tried to memorize this moment, the feeling of the cold stone beneath me, the presence of my friends beside me, the hope nestled in the pot in my hands. I thought about the wish I'd written, buried beneath the seed. I wish for the courage to become whoever I'm meant to be, even if I don't know who that is yet. Maybe that was the point. Maybe we weren't supposed to know. Maybe life was about the becoming, not the arriving, about the journey, not the destination. All those cliches that seemed trite until you lived long enough to understand their truth. "1 minute," Claire whispered, looking at her phone. My heart started beating faster. There was something about the turning of the year that always felt significant, even though it was just an arbitrary mark on a human-made calendar. But maybe that's the beauty of it. We got to choose when things began and ended. We got to decide when to start fresh, when to let go, when to try again. 20 seconds, Claire said. We all stood up, still holding our pots. Without discussing it, we moved closer together, forming a tight circle, our shoulders touching. 20 seconds. I could hear people counting down somewhere in the distance. 10, 9, 8. 10 seconds, Claire said, and we joined the count. 9. I looked at Emma, at the determination in her eyes. 8. At Claire, at the hope breaking through her sadness. 7. At Sophie, at the quiet strength in her expression. 6. And I felt something shift inside me, some tectonic plate of my soul moving into a new position. 5. This was it, the moment between moments. 4. The breath before the plunge. 3. The end and the beginning at once. 2. I closed my eyes. 1. Happy New Year! The words came out of all of us at once, and suddenly we were hugging, laughing, crying a little. Fireworks exploded somewhere nearby, and then farther away, and then all around us, the sky lighting up with bursts of color and light, gold and silver and blue and red, painting the darkness with temporary brilliance. We watched them together, our arms around each other, our pots still clutched carefully against our chests, and in that moment I felt something I hadn't felt in years, absolutely certain that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The fireworks continued for several minutes, a cascading display of light and sound. When they finally faded, leaving ghost images burned into my vision, we slowly lowered our arms and stepped apart. "Happy New Year," Emma said, again more softly this time. "Happy New Year," we echoed. We sat back down on our stones, setting our pots in front of us. The seeds inside were already beginning their journey, already transforming in ways we couldn't see. Just like us, just like our wishes. "What do we do now? Take them home with us?" Sophie asked. "Yeah, we each take care of our seed, our wish, watch it grow, and next year, or whenever we meet again, we can tell each other how it turned out." I like that, a living reminder of tonight, of what we promised each other. Emma pulled out her phone and held it up. "Picture?" she asked. "I know we're not usually the selfie type, but I want to remember this moment." We huddled together, our faces close, our pots held up in front of us. Emma took several pictures, and in each one we looked exactly how I felt, happy, hopeful, a little bit wild, completely ourselves. We stayed in the garden a while longer, not ready for the night to end. The fireworks had mostly stopped now, leaving the sky dark and peaceful again. Around us, the city was settling into the new year, some people heading home, others continuing their celebrations into the early morning hours. But we were content here in our quiet corner, in this overgrown garden that had witnessed so many of our wishes over the years. "Do you think any of them came true?" Claire asked suddenly. "The wishes we made when we were younger." I thought about it. Some of them, maybe, though never quite in the way we expected. "I wished to travel," Sophie remembered. "That one definitely came true, just not to space like I'd planned." We laughed softly. "I wished for my parents to stop fighting," Emma said quietly. "They divorced instead. At the time, I thought the wish had failed, but looking back, it was actually the best thing that could have happened. They're both happier now." "So maybe the wishes do come true," Claire said, "just in their own way, in the way they're supposed to." "Or maybe the act of wishing is what matters," I suggested. "Maybe planting that seed, literally and figuratively, is what makes us pay attention, what makes us work towards something, even if we don't realize we're doing it." Sophie nodded thoughtfully. "Like setting an intention, telling the universe, or yourself, what direction you want to move in." "I like that," Emma said. "It takes the pressure off. You're not waiting for some magical force to grant your wish, you're just pointing yourself in a direction and seeing where it leads. We fell into comfortable silence again. A light breeze had picked up, rustling through the bare branches and the tall grass. I could smell the earth, rich and damp from the rain. It smelled like possibility. "I'm scared," Claire admitted after a while. "About quitting, about not knowing what comes next." "Me too," I said. "Terrified, actually." "But we'll figure it out," Sophie said. "And we have each other. That's what tonight reminded me. We're not alone in this. We never were." Emma reached over and squeezed Sophie's hand. "Promise me we won't lose touch again, not like before. I know life gets busy and complicated, but I need you all in my life, even if it's just texts or calls or video chats, even if we can't be together like this all the time." "We won't," I promised. "We'll make an effort, a real effort." "Group chat," Claire declared, "starting tomorrow, and not one of those chats that starts out strong and then dies after 2 weeks, a real one. With memes," Sophie added, "and updates about our seeds. And our lives, the real stuff, not just the highlight reel we show everyone else." "Deal," we all agreed. I looked down at my pod, at the dark soil that held my wish and my seed. In a few weeks, if I took care of it, there would be a small green shoot pushing through, and then eventually flowers. Wildflowers, Sophie had said, the kind that could grow anywhere. I liked that metaphor. I wanted to be like that, adaptable, resilient, able to bloom wherever life planted me. "We should probably head back," Emma said reluctantly. "It's getting really cold." She was right. Now that the adrenaline of midnight had faded, I could feel the chill settling into my bones. My hands were stiff, my feet numb in my damp shoes. We stood up slowly, gathering our pots one last time. Before we left, we walked to the center of the garden, to the spot where Mrs. Hartley's house used to stand. There was nothing there now but grass and weeds, but I could still picture it: the white porch, the rocking chair, the lavender plants by the front steps. "Thank you, Mrs. Hartley," Emma said softly, as if the old woman could somehow still hear us. We stood there in silent gratitude, 4 grown women honoring the memory of someone who'd shown them kindness when they were young. Then we turned and made our way back through the garden, back through the fence, back into the world beyond. The walk back felt different than the walk there. We moved more slowly now, tired but satisfied, like we'd completed some important pilgrimage. The streets were quieter now, most people having found their way home or to wherever they were spending the rest of the night. We reached the coffee shop where we'd started, where our cars were parked. For a moment, we all just stood there in the parking lot, reluctant to say goodbye. "This was perfect," Sophie said. "Thank you, Emma, for bringing us back here." "Thank you all for coming," Emma replied. "I wasn't sure you would." "Of course we came," Claire said. "We'll always come. That's what tonight taught me. No matter how far apart we drift, we'll always find our way back." We hugged then, one last time, a long, tight group embrace that said everything we couldn't quite put into words. When we finally pulled apart, I could see that we all had tears in our eyes. "Happy New Year," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "to new beginnings, to being brave, to whatever comes next." "Happy New Year," they echoed. We got into our separate cars, but before driving away, we all rolled down our windows. "Group chat tomorrow," Claire called out. "With pictures of our seeds," Sophie added. "And updates about the brave things," Emma reminded us. "I love you all," I shouted, not caring if anyone else in the parking lot heard. "We love you too," they called back. And then, slowly, we drove away in different directions, carrying our pots and our wishes and our renewed sense of purpose into the new year. As I drove through the quiet streets, I kept glancing at the pot secured in my passenger seat. Such a simple thing, clay and soil and a tiny seed, but it represented so much more. It was a promise I'd made to myself, a commitment to growth, to change, to becoming. I thought about the blank pages waiting for me at home, the stories I'd been too afraid to write, the life I'd been too scared to live. Not anymore. Tomorrow, today actually, since it was now past midnight, I would start. I would write one page, just one, and then another, and another, until I'd built something real, something true, something mine. The fear was still there. It probably always would be, but now it was joined by something stronger, hope, and the memory of 3 friends who believed in me, who were facing their own fears, who'd reminded me that I didn't have to do this alone. I smiled as I turned onto my street, already thinking about what I would write first. I pulled into my apartment complex and sat in the car for a moment, engine off, just looking at the pot beside me. Through my windshield, I could see my building, plain, ordinary, the same place I'd been returning to for 2 years. But somehow, tonight, it looked different. Or maybe I was different. My phone buzzed. The group chat. Emma had already created it. Made it home safe. Pot is on my kitchen table, already talking to it like a crazy person. Same. Told mine all about our night. Pretty sure my neighbors think I've lost it. My pot name's Gerald. Don't ask me why, it just looks like a Gerald. I laughed out loud in the dark car, my breath fogging the windows. Mine doesn't have a name yet, still getting to know each other. This is ridiculous, and I love it. Same time next year? There was a pause, and then 3 dots appeared as we all started typing at once. Yes, absolutely. It's a date, and we're doing this every year from now on, no matter what. No matter what. I sat there, smiling at my phone, feeling more connected to them than I had in years, even though we were now miles apart. The group chat continued, Sophie sharing a blurry photo of her pot, Emma sending a meme about New Year's resolutions, Claire making plans to visit me in the spring. Finally, I tucked my phone away and carefully lifted my pot. The soil was cool against my fingers as I steadied it. I got out of the car and walked slowly toward my apartment, mindful not to jostle the precious cargo in my hands. Inside, my apartment was exactly as I'd left it, tidy, quiet, a little sparse. I'd never really decorated much, never committed to making it feel like home. It had always felt temporary, like I was waiting for my real life to start somewhere else. But maybe this was my real life. Maybe it had been all along. I set the pot on the small table by my window where it would get morning light. Then I stood back and looked at it. Such a small thing, but inside it, invisible to my eyes, a seed was already beginning its work, absorbing water, softening its shell, preparing to split open and reach toward the light. Growing required breaking first. I understood that now. I made myself a cup of tea and curled up on my couch with my laptop. For months, it had sat unused except for job applications and mindless internet browsing. But tonight, this morning, I opened a blank document and stared at the cursor blinking on the white page. My heart was racing. My fingers hovered over the keys. What did I want to say? What story needed to be told? And then, slowly, I began to type. When we were kids, the 4 of us had a secret tradition. The words came easier than I expected, not perfectly, not brilliantly, but honestly. I wrote about the garden, about Mrs. Hartley, about planting seeds and wishes. I wrote about growing up and growing apart and finding your way back home. I wrote until the sky outside my window started to lighten from black to deep blue to pale gray. I wrote until my tea went cold and my back ached from sitting too long. I wrote until I'd filled 5 pages, then 10, then 15. When I finally stopped, exhausted but exhilarated, the sun was rising, the first light of the new year streaming through my window and falling across my pot, across my keyboard, across me. I saved the document and closed my laptop. My body was tired, but my mind felt clear, alive, like I'd been sleepwalking for years and had finally woken up. My phone buzzed again. The group chat was still going. Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts. Anyone else still awake? Just finished writing. First time in years. That's amazing. Wait, I'm crying. Is it weird that I'm crying? Not weird at all. I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of all of us. For tonight, for tomorrow, for trying. To trying. To trying. To trying. I set my phone down and walked to the window. Below, the world was waking up. Early morning joggers, someone walking their dog, the first cars heading to work, the new year stretching out ahead of them, full of unknowns. But I wasn't afraid of the unknowns anymore. Or rather, I was still afraid, but I was doing it anyway. That was what courage was, I realized. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. I looked at my pot again, at the dark soil that held so much potential. In a few weeks, there would be a sprout. In a few months, flowers. And what about my wish? What about my courage, my becoming? I didn't know how it would unfold. I didn't know if I'd succeed at writing, if Claire would find her new path, if Sophie would find her right relationship, if Emma would find peace with herself. We might fail, we might stumble, we might have to plant new seeds and make new wishes, but we would do it together. That was what tonight had taught me. We would keep showing up for each other, keep checking in, keep reminding each other to be brave when the fear got too loud. I thought about Mrs. Hartley then, about something she'd said to me once that I'd almost forgotten. I'd been maybe 13, helping her weed her garden, and I'd asked her why she kept planting things when she was so old, when she might not live to see them fully grown. She looked at me with those sharp, knowing eyes and smiled. Because hope isn't about guarantees, it's about planting anyway. It's about doing the work of growing even when you're not sure what will bloom. I understood now. This was the work, the showing up, the trying, the planting of seeds both literal and metaphorical, the choice to keep growing, keep reaching, keep blooming wherever we found ourselves. I was tired, but it was a good tired, the kind that comes from meaningful effort, from a night that changed something essential. I would sleep soon, and when I woke, I would water my seed and write another page and text my friends and keep moving forward into this new year, this new version of myself. But first, I walked to my pot and gently touched the soil with my fingertip. "Grow," I whispered to the seed beneath. "We'll figure it out together, one day at a time." Outside, the sun continued its rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The first day of the year, the first day of trying, the first day of so many days to come. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, I was excited to see what they would bring.